Good afternoon and welcome to another Let's Get Real. Today we're going to be talking about relationships and um, dating. Today we're joined with Corinne Woodard, Jessica Bethel, and Latoya Royal Batista. We're having a little technical difficulty. Hopefully we'll be joined by Damon Leggett shortly. But we want to go ahead and get started and get into the seriousness of dating in the 2000s. Anyway, let's start with a moment of prayer. If we could bow our heads, dear Heavenly Father, as we begin this program, I pray that you would be with us, watch over us, and keep us. Be with the families that are tuned in. Uh, Cover everyone during such a tumultuous time of this COVID-19 and other illnesses that family is under, cancer, all of the different things that are attacking us as families, as well as mentally and spiritual during a time of isolation. Be with us, watch over us, and keep us. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Amen. As we get started, we're going to open up with what's going on in 2020 as far as dating. How are we dating? How are we relating? And I want to go ahead and start out with Jessica. Jessica, what do you see as how young people are dating here in 2020?
So I think in 2020 dating has different standards. Unlike, most people are used to way back if we're talking about the 90s, 80s, and etc. Due to technology and how we communicate nowadays. Right now, I think when we were speaking earlier and everything about discussing how do we go about this, some of the things that we spoke about in terms of like how dating is perceived, we have different stages. We have the talking stage, the dating stage, and then we head on to the relationship stage. So I think that's really how dating is viewed right now is more of like technology has taken over, and a lot of how our kids are dating now is completely different what you're used to. So we have to move ahead with the times. Like most everything else that we discuss nowadays, we have to move with the times of how dating is now.
Okay. I want to throw it out to Latoya quickly and say, how do you think it has evolved from when you were dating to now? So we could just do, a brief synopsis.
Okay, well, first of all, dating now in 2020, or I'd say probably since like 2000 came in, the dating sites have taken a lot out of the personal interaction and actually getting to know people. So how we used to meet people, you go out, you go to camp meeting, you go to bowling alleys, you go to skating rink. That's how we used to meet people. Now it's Facebook, Instagram, Tinder, eHarmony, Christian Mingle. I think that's one of them. So it's so, to me now, it's not personal. It's okay if you're on one of these dating apps and the person says the right thing, or you get a match. Oh, okay, based off of the criteria you put in, this is how you start a conversation, or this is how you start the dating, the going out, the let's get to know each other based off of a criteria that you put into a dating app. And we're not used to that. That's not what we used to do. We used to actually meet people face to face and decide, hey, you know what, I want to get to know them. We exchange phone numbers. Now technology has taken all of that out of the interpersonal dating scene.
And you're also susceptible to being catfished. I would add so there's that element as well. If you're not aware what
Okay.
catfishing
Please,
is,
praise the Lord.
catfishing is basically if you're talking to somebody online and you see a certain picture of them and see a different, they present a different personality and picture. And when you eventually meet them in person or catch them, because there is a show called Catfish, everybody can watch it and do their own research. When you eventually meet them, they are not the person they're supposed to be. um, they turn out to be, if you watch the show Catfish, sometimes they turn out to be, you could be thinking you're talking to a man and you're actually talking to a woman that's trying to get back at you. Those are those instances. So that is what we deal with now in the age of dating.
We could also look at direct messaging, also known as DMing. You can see somebody out, like I can kind of piggyback off what Toya was saying. Nowadays, you don't really get approached by people necessarily. It's more so, oh, I happen to know somebody who knows somebody, so they tell that person to talk to you, and they DM you from there, and that's how we kind of communicate. I would agree that we have lost the sense of like trying to get to know each other in person. It's not as, what is it? You don't connect really on person until later.
Interpersonal relationship.
Yeah, until later on. So I would say that.
Well, I would say that maybe that's part of the problem, because if you're dating to get to know someone, you're not dating because if you want the relationship, or you want it to go into a relationship, you got to get to know that person and you got to become friends. Because for any long lasting relationships, marriage, whatever, you have to become friends with that person, because if you're trying to get to a long relationship or get into a relationship that's going to be worth your salt or time, you have to be able to put into that relationship who you are, because you stay with that person because you get to know them. So if you don't get to know them, it's not going to work. So let's talk about some of the faux pas that are made, or maybe some of the getting from talking to friendship to hookup. Because sometimes let's just be real about this. Sometimes people are on there just to hook up versus being friends. Go ahead, Tony.
I like you were saying about the stages of dating. I think dating has become sort of like a everybody's doing it, so I have to find somebody to date. And I think it's like, oh, Jessica's dating, so let me go on Tinder, let me look for somebody to date. And just like you were saying, it doesn't lead into being friends. It doesn't lead into an actual relationship. It leads into a hookup. So a lot of the people on Tinder and on, I'm not going to say Christian Mingle, on eHarmony are not necessarily looking for a relationship or to even date. A lot of these people are looking for, okay, these are the criterias, they hit my top three, let me go ahead and DM them. It's not about being friends. A lot of the dating scenes now, it's not about being friends. It's about what can I do and how fast can I get to the hookup stage, or once we hook up, then I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to talk. I don't, I stop DMing me, stop messaging me. There's nothing else after the hookup stage. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, because a lot of us aren't secure in being single. It's okay. We go out. Jessica's bringing her boyfriend. Corinne's bringing her boyfriend. Here I go to third wheel, just la la la. And now I see them in a relationship. So now I'm like, I want to be in a relationship also. But I lower my standards just to be in a relationship, which is not really a relationship, because I met this person, we weren't friends, we went to the hooking up stage. I don't really know anything about them or anything that's going on. And then I just moved from point A to F without going from A, B, C, and D. And that's why I think when it comes to the internet, it takes a lot of that away. Because back in the day when we were younger, we saw somebody, then we got their phone number. We had to talk on the phone before we even got to see them again. Even as a teenager, 18, 19, 17, we talked on the phone, but our parents wasn't just letting us go out all willy-nilly. We would have to make plans. Okay, I'll meet you at the basketball game Saturday night. And then we see each other. And then we hang out at the basketball game, and then we're talking on the phone, but then we won't see each other until the next basketball game or the next church function or the next time we get together, with another church, if it was somebody from a different church. That's all been pretty much overstepped because you're sending pictures back and forth. You guys have cars, so you're bypassing the okay, let's talk on the phone stage. You're texting. Your texting is taken away from actually communicating on the phone. The texting takes away from the tone. It takes away from what the person actually could be meaning. So we bypass a stage with the social media. I call it the social media speed dating.
Okay.
We find someone on social media, we DM them, they say, hey, let's meet up. We meet up, we have relations, and then it's, oh, they blocked me on social media. And now I'm left with okay, I thought that we were getting to know each other, but I've already went from step A to F and bypassed B, C, and D and E.
So I think that a lot has to do with the mindset and getting away from a lot of the principles that a lot of us have been brought up with, or the principles that have been set by God. And in doing so, we lose what we are so desperately searching. First of all, before you start dating, I think you need to have a awareness of self and to have some self-worth. A lot of people don't have self-worth. And if you don't feel like you're good enough or feel as if you are a contributing member to society, how can you go into a relationship when you don't even feel good about who you are?
But I believe we also have to look at the home life and like being in a single family home. You have to look at that and see how the dynamic in the home was. If mom set this type of standard and the child sees this, you're usually going to probably grow up to repeat those same steps that your mom took or your dad took, and you don't know any better because that's all you've ever known. So I feel like we also have to look at that when we're looking into dating and stuff, because you're looking at the example that has been set before you.
And to take it a step further, I guess in the sense of what Corinne is saying as well, there are a lot of factors when it comes to the dating phase and when it comes to personal issues that people are dealing with. When it comes to trauma, when it comes to those type of things, I think when we talk about when young people are just skipping important phases of the dating phase and just hooking up or just, doing whatever satisfies them physically first before getting to know in person, I think we need to factor in. And a lot of times as a body of Christ, we pass that introspective in terms of we aren't looking at the factors of, is this person when they were younger, were they sexually assaulted? So does that lead to them being hypersexual? Does that lead to them being, they don't even want to even try to date? They don't even want to even be around the opposite sex to even try to date. There are different ends of the spectrum that leads to why people view dating and a lot of these things, especially in our communities, and a lot of people of color do not deal with under the surface when it comes to relationships. And that goes in with any relationship, relationship with your parents, relationships with your family in general, just friendships, how you view it. Those little internal problems that you deal with when you're a child show up when you start developing and trying to create and cultivate relationships. So those are things that we, I guess, in a sense, need to start thinking about rather than trying to basically substitute and gloss over a lot of things.
Okay. Well, Jessica, you touched on quite a few things there that are serious. And it goes back to because we've gotten away from what God has structured, He gave us, some basic things to live by. And the further we get away from those basic things, the more all of these other things come in here because of sin. And when you've been hurt mentally, physically, whatever the case may be, we as brown people tend to not seek help or find someone that we can trust to share that burden. And in not getting that help, it puts up walls or leads us into hypersexuality or leads us into just shutting down and not dealing with the world. And something that we talked about, I know Toya and I talked about earlier, is the fact that you all seem to be getting older and older and older when you decide to marry or get into a relationship. Whereas when I was coming up, we were getting married in our 20s. A lot of you all aren't getting married or even getting into a serious relationship until you are in your 30s, and a lot of the millennials are actually not having children till you're in your 40s. And so it's like the age group is getting pushed back. But since we're talking about that, how?
Can I say to that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. Can I say to that point, when it comes to us marrying later or having kids later in life, you have to understand the culture that we are growing up in. A lot of these discussions are streamlined through millennials and Gen Z in terms of like we're being real with ourselves. We need to heal what's going on internally in terms of we don't want to, get into, I guess, in a sense, it's backwards and forwards. One part of us don't want to just try to jump into relationships and do all sorts of things and develop, further trauma. And a part of us want to heal those type of things and just try to live our best lives in like just being single and just chilling and just trying to figure it out that way. So there's two ends of the extreme spectrum, and that's just Gen Z and millennials in general. I think in a sense, waiting later to do things versus jumping into things earlier, in my opinion, is a lot better in the long run. That's just me.
Oh no, I thoroughly agree with that. I would say that take your time. There's no time limit on that. But to be in a relationship, speaking from someone who's been married and all of that, I don't see the millennials taking the time to actually get to know someone to be able to be friends. And I see your hand, Toya. Go ahead.
I think the age frame, the millennials, I don't think they understand the concept of the singleness, the dating, and the relationship. Because a lot of millennials they start talking to someone, they skip over the relationship, they go to sexual connection, and then someone gets attached, the other one doesn't feel the same way that one feels, and it was just a hookup, and now there's no relationship. So you don't even get a chance to actually really, like she's saying, the millennials, a lot of millennials are, I'm not going to say that they wait later to have children, because a lot of the millennials that have children are children themselves. A lot of the under age or the younger generation are starting to have kids, the 15 and 16. There's more 15, 16 and 17-year-olds that have had kids, and they're raising kids. So they had kids at 16, 17, and now they have a 15, 16-year-old. They're only 30 something years old. So you have to think about that also. It's babies raising babies. So what do you have to offer someone at 17 when you're just trying to come into your characteristics, your personality, your standards, and the things that you were taught? You're trying to come into that yourself, trying to raise another child. And if you don't get that background, the standards, and what's needed for you to actually raise a child, then you're passing that on to your child. So you're a millennial or Gen X, I don't know which one comes first. You're a millennial, and then you're raising a Gen X, but you guys are the same age, you're in the same era. The mother and the child are being raised in the same era. So you don't even have a chance to understand the fact that, okay, you go through certain stages. You were in high school. You started liking a guy, y'all got together, y'all hooked up, you became pregnant. It never really turned into a relationship because you guys never really got to know each other. It was just oh, I like this guy and I hooked up in high school. Now you're pregnant. Now you're raising a baby. And you didn't get a chance to you didn't even get a chance to understand the stages of an actual relationship or the stages of the dating. We go out, we hang out, that we actually are in a relationship. And then the fact that, okay, we're in a long-term relationship, you go to marriage. You didn't even give yourself a chance to do that because your first thought was, okay, if I want to keep this guy or if we're going to be an item, soon as we sleep together, oh, we're automatically in a relationship. And that's not the way it is. So it's a lot harder being 17, 8, even 18, 19, raising a child, and y'all are basically being raised in the same era, but you're a parent and they're a child.
I feel like that goes back to the parents, and I'm not saying that the parents are necessarily always to blame, but a lot of parents nowadays do not talk to their children. You get told, don't have sex, don't do this, don't do that, but you're never really, I'm not saying that we always need an explanation, but with certain things, I feel like parents should really talk to their kids. A lot of parents do not know their kids, and they either think that their child is a saint and stuff, or oh, my child knows better, da 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 da. But at the end of the day, not urges, but there are temptations out there. And if you're not telling your child how to date and how to go about life, you're basically figuring it out through the world. And, a lot of parents say they don't want their kids to figure out things through the world, but if you're not talking to them, what other choice is there to learn how to go about life?
So how do we, as a church, as members, go about giving practical and getting back to the basics knowledge to our young people so that they understand God set these things into play to help them. It wasn't to hurt them. So many times, because we're in the church, our kids, I hear the kids say, all we hear is no, 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 no. You can't do this. You can't do that. Well, let's talk about what we can do. And let's talk about why we have the principles we have and why God gave us. He gave it to us to protect us. He gave it to us because he knew the urges were going to come. But that's why we have to get back to the basics and get the knowledge. Even though we live in a technical society, things have not changed. The interpersonal relationships, we're suffering because we're not having those relationships and getting to know people and getting the self-esteem and working through the hurt. So how do we kind of mend this and get to, you know what I'm saying, get to where we get back to the basics of the principles that Christ gave us? He said a man and a woman should join. He gave us the tool. We had to get to know each other. And I think because we've taken getting to know one another out of the criteria, you just, you think you know that person. I think it's more lust than knowing, if you understand what I'm saying. Uh,
Yeah, I get you. I think when it comes to what do we do to solve this issue of how do we get back to God's word and how we should date as Christians, is being real with them. You have to be real about the state of the world. Your kids are learning from TikTok what sex is. They're learning from Instagram what sex is. They're learning what relationships that are not conventional or of what we're used to seeing and what we practice in the church. They're learning that through different forms of social media. So I think you should really be real with your children about what's going on. Instead of tiptoeing around the subject, I think you should be real with them at the end of the day. That's the first solved problem. As the body of Christ and as church people, I think you should develop real programs that talk about real issues such as this. If we're, say, for instance, I don't want to pick on singles ministry, but singles ministry is flawed. I'm sorry. It's a flawed system. We talk about it's basically, oh, just get married. We just want you to be in singles ministry, meet somebody within the church and get married. That's a flawed system. We're not being real with our children. We're not being real with the young people. Create realistic expectations that work with the world, but bring Christ to the forefront. That's it.
And I feel like
Toya was next. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Toya.
Yeah, sorry, Corinne. I feel that a lot of people cannot talk to their kids. They have this, you got to think, they come from a generation where their parents didn't tell them about sex. The generation before that didn't tell them about sex. It was a hands-on. Okay, we're going to learn as we go. And you can't really do that because the technology and the information that we have now is so much more useful than what they had back then. And a lot of times parents don't understand that they can use and utilize the information and the technology that's out there to help them discuss, relationships, sex, and anything else when it comes to the dating scene. The biggest thing is, what are the expectations when you're dating or when you're talking to someone? There's different stages. In the talking stage, or I guess it's the talking stage for this age group, the talking stage, there should be no sexual connection. The talking stage is literally trying to determine if this person is going to be your friend. Do you like this person? Would you like to move forward to a relationship? But a lot of times in the talking stage, a lot of young girls feel, oh, to keep him talking to me, I have to be sexually active with him. That's a huge issue because the young lady thinks, okay, I've slept with him, we were talking, now we're in a relationship. The young man doesn't necessarily feel that way. And that's the different spectrums of the talking stage. Young ladies feel, once I have sex with you, then okay, we're dating. The young man feels, oh, well, we just had sex, we were just talking, there was no real relationship. So we don't even know what consists of the talking stage. The talking stage is actually hanging out, going to the bowling alley, the skating rink, going to the park, going go-karting, trying to even see if you're even comfortable being around this person for hours and hours without there being an issue. A lot of times in the talking stage, you can determine someone's personality and someone's characteristics, and there's signs. In the talking stage, there's signs if this person is going to be abusive, how this person talks to you, how this person reacts to certain things. That's what the talking stage is for. You want to make sure you read all those signs before you take the next step, which is the dating, where it's exclusively just you and them, where they're not going to pursue anything with somebody else. You're not going to pursue anything with anybody else. And it's just going to be you two building towards a relationship. And sometimes before you even build towards that relationship, in the talking stage, you get signs where you don't want to deal with certain things. But like I stated, a lot of people bypass that and do the sexual connection. So the talking phase should not be sexually explicit. There should be nothing there besides talking. And I believe that when you're talking to someone, it doesn't have to be strictly, oh, well, I'm talking to Johnny and that's it. You're getting to know Johnny. Johnny's your friend. You're trying to see on what friend level you and Johnny are going to reach. But if Terry comes along and you and Terry want to go hang out, grab some ice cream, grab a slushie, go to Sonic, I don't think that you should limit yourself from going to grab a slushie or ice cream with Terry.
I'm sorry. I thought I was unmuted here. Um, I I appreciate what Toya said. We were having another person, so forgive me, who was supposed to be on with us, and they're having all kind of technical difficulties because the devil's busy. He doesn't want this gentleman to join us to give us the male perspective, but we're still working on it. I wanted to say I appreciate what Toya said, and I'm going to tell you some of my experience. When I first got married, I was just like blown away because I felt like nobody told me. Jessica alluded to it earlier. The church makes it seem like once you get married, it's like the book, happily ever after, and it solved everything. Whereas I think it was more work than it was during the, as my parents would say, the courtship stage. It's difficult to be in a committed relationship and not be married, and you're having those feelings. You don't really know where to put those feelings, and if no one's talked to you, you're going back, like Toy said, to the world to try to figure it out. Now we have the internet right at in our hands, and you can look up anything, and I do mean anything. Just because you're looking it up does not mean that's the biblical way of doing it, because the standards have dropped. Toya talked about how the standards have dropped for young ladies, and they feel like if they don't give in to these guys or be sexually, active with these guys, that they're going to drop them and move on. Well, maybe they are, because if they're just looking up for a hookup, then that's not who you need to be with. Men will tell you, and I've talked to many guys, I have a lot of guy friends, and they will tell you that if they are really into you and you're going to be the young lady that they're going to take home to meet their mother, it's not going to be the free, easy girl that you could just hook up with. They're not going to be with that person. They want someone who has a standard, and we have to get to that standard. So, what are your standards? What is your criteria? Other than, oh, he looks good. Look good lasts about this long. And I always tell my daughter, the man you love at 16, you can hate at 18, because you're changing, you're evolving, and you're not the same person you were, I would say, even last year, because life happens, and those things that happen to you change you as a person. And so what we need to take from that is, what are our standards? What are we looking for? What is the first thing? And not those, I had to write this one down, not those faux pas of what is your deal breaker, as far as
He has to be tall.
right. Some things are not the importance of it. Some things are not that important, but we make it a magnitude kind of thing. What is it that is important versus, you used the word last night, I can't think of what it is. When we're talking about deal breakers, what is important versus, that's my little pet peeve.
Unrealistic. You said unrealistic.
Thank you,
Yes.
Jessica. So what is important versus unrealistic?
I would say personality. Definitely. If you can be nice looking all day, and if you aren't nice looking within, and you have a nasty attitude, to me that takes you down 10. I don't even think you're attractive anymore. So, personality, I feel like is definitely one of those things, and um, yeah, you have to look. You got to look at. I feel like you have to more so look at within than out nowadays, because it's more important to know somebody's heart than it is to just look at them and be like, "Oh, you look good." But if you have a nasty attitude, I can't even have a conversation with you. But it's
But
not going to be enough.
and the thing that I may find as a deal breaker, you may not find as a deal breaker. You know, but I think that okay for me. Let's go for me. I'm 5'8", so for me, I can't. I'm sorry. This is me. I can't date a man who's 5'4". It's just not. It's not gonna work for me. You know, other women. I know some women that don't mind dating guys who are
But
way
see,
further than them. Um,
but okay, but see that the deal breaker that that's the dating stage. Here's the thing. That's the talking stage. Before you even get to a relationship, you should be able to hang out with this person. And if you find out that they have an ugly personality, that stops right there. You have no connection. You have no ties. You know what? You've spent a couple dates y'all went out to a couple places. You realize this isn't for me. You're able to cut ties right there. But when you actually start sleeping with people, your ties are going to be a lot harder to cut because now you have some kind of other connection. So that's where it comes to the talking in the dating stage. Like even you say the guy that's 5'4". This guy 5'4", but you guys go out and you have a blast. You have a great time. His personality is on point, and there's other things that attract you to him. He's handsome, great personality, smells nice, dresses well kept, speaks well. But then you're telling me that because he's 5'4", you can't do it. And that's where the talking stage is, because that lets you know that talking stage might change your deal breaker. It might get to the point where you're like, you know what? This guy treats me very well, and this is something I can pursue. So guess what? That deal breaker in your mind, that standard of I need a 6'4" man, goes out the window because you just went on a date with Terry, the 6'4" guy, and he had a nasty personality and a nasty attitude. But then you went on a date with John, the 5'4" man, and he very well kept. He has everything else that you wanted. And that's the importance of the dating stage. Because all because of your deal breaker, you would have ended up with Terry, the 6'4" nasty attitude guy, just because.
Wait a minute now.
I think let me chime in real quick. I think let me pose this question to you guys. What do we do in a world that makes looks and physical or just physical attraction the top priority as a deal breaker? That's the thing. Like, we're talking about, it is like Latoya said, I totally agree with her. And I have many friends that have done this where in the talking phase, they have met, Joe Blow over here and Sam that was not meeting their attractive standards, but treated them like the queen she is deserving to be. She ended up sleeping with the really nice looking guy and ends up getting hurt. But this guy over here is trying to treat her like she's the most amazing. So, what do we do in a world where society says physical looks and attraction are number one priority when dating versus personality versus spirituality versus, as somebody says, being equally yoked in a sense? at the end of the day? What do we do in those situations for a lot of our young people? Because you have to remember, like we said, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook is teaching your kids that physical attraction is number one, and you'll be clowned if you bring somebody that is busted in the face to your family. So what do we do to that?
I say we have to get back to those principles and teach our children that you have to have an inner self-worth, and your inner self-worth comes from God. And at the end of the day, we have to be peculiar people. We can't follow the crowd. I've never been a crowd pleaser or a crowd follower. There were certain standards that were set for me. There were certain standards that I was raised with that I'm not going to go below. We all fall down. None of us are perfect. We all have our times where we fall. But like the song said, it's getting back up. And when you get back up, you have to remember the principles that were set up by God. He told you your body is the temple of God. He didn't say that just to say it. He said it because we've forgotten that our body is the temple of God. And so if God is dwelling here, we have to make sure that we're doing what we need to do so that God will continue to dwell here, so the Holy Spirit will come upon us. I see there are a lot of comments. Let me start reading. Jessica, could you read some of those comments for me, please? So that
Biblical standards for dating is like traffic light. It keeps you safe. However, it doesn't stop you from driving. Another 2 points by Joselle is important moral spirituality, basically being equally yoked. And she said also, well, as a believer, we're not living in the world, so that doesn't apply to us. Yeah, I mean, those are valid points, but a lot of the times that is just not realistic points in terms of what we're dealing with now. That's just me.
I feel like you really have to block everybody else out. Like, for instance, you just gotta block out the haters, and it's not about what everybody else may think he is or she is, whatever. It's about who you can match with. And I feel like we get so caught up in what everybody else thinks about our life instead of what's best for us, and we end up in these hurt situations, like you said, and you end up hurting stuff because you're so worried about what society's going to think of who you've chosen to be with instead of who matches your beliefs and your morals and with your standards, what you need in your life, instead of what the world thinks that you need or desires you to be with. So,
Toya.
Okay. That comment you read, they said we're in the world, but not. You're on mute, Jess.
We are not living in the world, so as believers, we are not living in the world, so that doesn't apply to us.
Okay. We're here. We're in the world. And we actually have to learn to protect ourselves against the things that are of the world. You can't live in a world and survive in a world if you don't give yourself the tools and utilize them to protect yourself. We are in an age of technology. If we want to protect our children and our children's children, and we want our children to be prepared, we can't have our kids stick their head in the sand, keep their eyes down, and not participate in anything that goes on in the world. We have kids that go to public school. Public school is one of the places that they spend the majority, or school. School is one of the places that they spend the majority of the time. A child is at school from 8 o'clock sometimes in the morning to 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they've spent more time at school than they have at home. And you don't want school and the things that's going on at school and these other people to be able to influence your child where you have not spoken to them about certain things, and now they're just now hearing it, and what they're hearing, they're taking and they're running with. Now it's different if they hear something at school, they bring it home and you discuss it. But for you just to leave it at whatever they hear at school and that's what they're going to believe and go with, we can't do that. And that's exactly why a lot of our kids are so naive and so susceptible to these people coming and actually able to manipulate them, because we're so afraid to discuss the issues that our children are actually dealing with at school. These kids, there's some kids that are actually in relationships and have a whole boyfriend at school, but us as parents would never know it because we're like, oh, our children aren't learning anything. Wrong. They're not going to discuss it with you because you've never discussed it with them before. So, and they having a whole relationship. A whole relationship. They skipping third and fourth period, and you getting phone calls. You're like, oh no, can't be my child because they're in a whole relationship, and what they've done is the relationship that they've learned is either what they're seeing at home, and they're practicing it, or they're looking at their other friends at school and the type of relationships that their other friends are having, and they're letting that define the type of relationship that they want to have with somebody. And that's where we can't do that. We have to prepare our children. We have to give them the tools they need to be successful and to succeed and to not be manipulated, and where they actually have standards. When you should have standards across the board. Standards should not just come with the way you dress, the way you act. You should have standards when it comes sexually. You should have standards when it comes mentally. You should have standards when it comes emotionally. You have to have standards in all aspects of your life. Work ethic, that should be a standard. You just can't put it on just standards when it comes to marrying somebody in the church. No, you need to have standards when you're dating. I don't want you just dating anybody that's in the church, because just because they're in the church doesn't mean it should be somebody you should date. You have to have standards on all aspects of life. And when I teach you the standards of, okay, listen, I don't want you out there every time you talk to a guy, you feel you have to sleep with them. That's a standard I want from you. You're not just going to sleep with any and everybody. That's a standard. When you go out, when you present yourself, you're not going to advertise. You're not going to wear the low-cut shirts and the shorts and things that you shouldn't wear, because you're advertising. And what are you advertising for? You're letting these guys know, oh, come talk to me because this is what I have to offer you.
No. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like I said, living in the world, we have to set the standards at home. You have to talk to your kids about, you're not going to wear that out of my house. You're not going to say that. You're not going to do that. And there's certain things that we just have to put our foot down and stop being afraid of letting these kids know. When you go to school, there's going to be some girls that have a name. You don't want to be associated with them because birds of a feather tend to flock together. So we're not doing that. Those girls that's around there doing certain things with certain guys, and the guys are talking about it and it's coming back, don't associate yourself with them. Because of the fact that you're hanging with them, the guys might think that you do it.
But with that, with telling us no, I feel like it's very important to include the why. Because I know a lot of kids, you tell them no, they're going to go 10 times harder to do exactly what you told them not to do because you didn't explain why. And I had this issue growing up with her. Some things I wanted to wear, when I was younger, and she was saying no. And she would explain it for me, because that's just how our relationship is. She would explain to me why I shouldn't wear or want to wear something like that, because it's giving me energy it's bringing me energy from people that I don't necessarily want their attention. And I feel like it's so important to explain that, where if we're doing that through our clothes, the music that I'm seeing the comments, the music that we're listening to, the shows we're watching, it's important to explain why we shouldn't or want to be like that.
Let me just reiterate right quick to let everyone know. We had a male that was supposed to be on here, but the devil is so busy. He has done everything. They were out of Chicago. They've done everything to mess up the connection, and they haven't been able to get in. So I've asked someone else to step in to help us out. And if there are any other males out there who know me directly, text me. We'd love to have you in this discussion. But I think part of the problem, and this is something that I've been ridiculed about as far as being the hippie mom and being too open with my kids. I saw when I was growing up, my mom would come and say to me, I need to tell you something. And I used to be like, oh, no, I don't want to hear this. But she would say, you're getting older. You're going to have certain feelings. I need you to understand it's nothing wrong with you having those feelings. It's natural. It's a part of growing up. And I used to kind of cringe, but I said, as I got older, I appreciated the fact that my mom took the time out to have that conversation with me. And I realized that my friends' parents didn't do that. And so I felt it was a need to make sure that when I had my kids, that I let them know from an early age. I kind of started indoctrinating them early to be able to talk to me about anything. And so I would come to them and say, listen, you're getting older and you're going to start feeling this way or that way. And they would look at me and go, oh, no, Mama. And I was like, nope, we're going to talk about this, because there is a lack of this in our church. If our church, I feel, would tackle some of these harder things, we would not have so many teenage pregnancies that are so taboo that Toya alluded to earlier. Then when the girls come, because the guys don't get it like the girls. I don't care how much we so-called progressed, how far we've come in this world. Girls always have the stigma of you being a teenage parent, and where the guys don't get the stigma of being a teenage father. So we as women, we now have this child, and we're out of wedlock, and then we come to the church, and then it's like, oh, you have the scarlet letter on your back because you had a child out of wedlock. God says, suffer the little children to come unto me. And we may not agree with how that child got here, but the child's here now. And God loves that child, and he loves that woman who made that mistake, or that child who made that mistake. And what we have to do is we have to rally around these young people and uplift them and let them know we still love you. Every one of us that made mistakes, we may not have made the same mistake. My sin may not be seen, but it doesn't mean I haven't sinned. It just means that I've sinned, I picked myself up, and I moved forward, and no one knew my sin. But your sin is open because you got a whole person walking around. And so what we have to do is we have to love these young people, and we have to get back to giving them the principles of God. Because at the end of the day, those principles are the reason why you have your self-esteem, why you feel like you can stand up straight and walk. Because at the end of the day, those principles always come back to be what is right, and no matter what. That's what the world looks at the end of the day too. Because if you got a bunch of kids over here, they're the main ones talking about you, the world. And we're so busy trying to be like the world instead of trying to be different, peculiar young people. We've got to learn, we have to hold up some standards. The first standard for me, and I talk to young people, not just my children, but I talk to young people. The first standard is you've got to know within yourself that you are valuable and that God loves you. And if you don't know that God loves you and that you are valuable, you're already confused and lost. That's the first thing. Secondly, you have to know that we go back to setting a criteria. What am I looking for? What are you looking for? I'm looking for someone who is going to respect me and treat me like the queen I should be. And so, therefore, fathers come into play. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so stressed about not having the person, the male that we were going to have on. But it is very important to have a male in your life that shows you the standard. My father, well, let me tell you, when we were growing up, my father would always, on a certain day, I don't know how many people know about Charlie Chips, but it was this chip company that would come around to his business, and they would bring lemon drops and big canisters of potato chips and all. And my dad would buy a bunch of different things, and he would bring them home, and he would share them. Now, that might not seem like much, but he would do that. He would bring flowers, and he showed me how I should be treated as a woman. He didn't call me out all out my name. He treated me, he showed my sister and I, you were supposed to be treated like this. So he would bring treats for my mom and bring treats for us. And on Valentine's Day, he always made sure we knew we were his sweethearts. And to this day, my dad will come and give us a hug and say, this is, so he taught me how I should be treated. And so if you don't have that man in your life to show you how you should be treated, or if you do and you're not living up to that standard, then you know you're below your standard. And so my standard growing up was my dad. My dad was always the standard. My dad didn't scream at me and talk to me all crazy, and he didn't hit me upside my head and beat on me. So I knew that's the standard. My dad was God in let me say this right, was God in the home, as far as saying, this is the way God wants us to love each other. And so the standard was that he treated me this way, and I should never let anyone treat me less than. Never. And when I got married, my dad had a conversation with my husband, because my husband told me that this is the standard, and you are to treat my daughter this way, and if not, bring her back. I had to laugh at that part, but that is the standard. And if you can't see that, then there's an issue. We have some new opinions. So, Jessica, would you mind reading some of the new content?
I think I see. I talk to my children about sex, and I tell them to come to me anytime they need to talk. I also teach them about setting boundaries, and it's just other comments are just agreeing with what you're saying. Another one I saw above is TV and music are teaching the children when the parents are not teaching. David said, create in me a clean heart. This means in part wholesome character and motives. I also wanted to say to what everybody was saying, I saw the setting boundaries, and that brought me back to, at the end of the day, we're all saying the same things. It comes back to the home, and it comes back to when we take our kids or when we go to church, what are the programs that are helping reinforce these type of lifestyles that we want to see? And unfortunately, the church is not, it's not to bash the church or anything, but it's just to improve what we do. What we need to do even more is improving the programs and how you do things, teaching about setting boundaries, teaching about self-love, teaching about self-worth, teaching just to love yourself before getting in relationships. And even if you do not have a father at home or a mother at that as well, because it's not just the women that are suffering from dating, in a sense, it's men that are not learning how to properly date as well, and how to properly court women as well, and how to approach women. They're always within certain homes, some young men are learning that inherently, they're not like they want to learn it, but that's what they see, that their mom getting beat is a part of self is love. And these are the realities of what a lot of young men are having to deal with. A lot of young men are not dealing with molestation that they have in the homes as well. That is very taboo. So these are certain topics that, yes, a lot of young ladies do need to know the self standards as well, but also the young men need to know the self standards of having what does love look like on an even playing field at the end of the day. And I think also within the church, like I said earlier, we idolize marriage. We idolize what it looks like, and we idolize, don't get me wrong, marriage is beautiful. We've all said this. But I think we need to emphasize also being single and having cultivating healthy relationships and friendships as well, versus just jumping into marriage right away, because it is not the end all be all at the end of the day. It's lovely, but it's also a part of what holds us back as a denomination, as the body of Christ, is that marriage is a big thing within our community. It's either you're single or you're not. And if you're single, you just look like you're basically not worthy of anything. And I think this also plays into how we feel about ourselves within relationships.
To go back, I think we also, for the what you were saying, Jessica, people not having necessarily a father in the home or mother in the home, we have to look at our villages too. I feel like it's really important on who you surround your kids around and they're growing up. If you surround your kids with the neighborhood fool, that's what you're going to start to see. You become your environment. So if you are raising your child around negativity and a father who's or an uncle, whatever the situation is, whoever they're looking at, they're slapping that other person around. That's not a positive influence. It's important. Like for me, for instance, my dad wasn't necessarily always in the home. So I looked at my grandfather, I looked at my Uncle Euclid. They made sure they went out of the way to show me how I should be treated. Whereas it's on Valentine's Day, and even my dad too, sending stuff. You have to look at other examples, and not always will it be in the form of a mother and father. Sometimes you have to look outside of that. Your cousins, your church family, even. It's important to establish those roles in your life for a better growing up, I guess.
We have a lot of comments. Just I don't think you read through all of them. Can't hear you.
I did. We already touched on most of them, except for the last one that just came in, which is how do we help our young people set boundaries?
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed the one about TV music videos and teaching the children. Oh, okay. I missed that one because I wanted to say something about that. Toya, go ahead. I'll come back to that. Go ahead,
Toya. Okay. Referring to I seen that message pop up about the teaching our children boundaries. I think that we need to be more involved. I know a lot of parents are a little weary or leery about talking to their children about sex. But I believe that we could actually create a program at the church where we do have actual sex educators, psychologists, people that are paid in their position to actually come in and discuss this with our children, along with the pastor, along with, but we have to give our children some type of boundaries. I think we should all ask our kids, what are your boundaries? I think we should have them write down, what are your standards? When you're going out on a date, what do you do? If someone starts to do X, or how do you respond if someone starts to do Y? We have to let them know that it's okay to dislike something someone does. A lot of them feel like, oh, okay, this is my first relationship. I really don't know how to act in a relationship, so I'm guessing this is how it goes. So I'm going to allow this to happen. We have to let them know if you don't feel comfortable with someone doing something and this goes for the young men too. It's not just for young ladies. There are some very aggressive young ladies out there that sometimes I have a son and I feel bad because I've seen things and I'm like, Lord, please protect my son, because there are some very aggressive young ladies out there that pursue young men for the same, they're predators also, the same way that these guys are predators on these women. And we have to teach both, stand if there's something that you're not comfortable with, if there's something that's said that you don't like, we have to teach them how to deal with that type of stuff. Instead of them just thinking, okay, I've never been in a relationship, so I'm just going to allow this to happen. No, because I think that a lot of times that's what happens when it comes to sexual relationships. I've never done this before. I don't know how to feel. My body's experiencing something. But if you're not comfortable, we need to let them know you don't have to do that if you're not comfortable.
I want to take a moment here. I just had a good friend of mine, Michael Lindo, to come in, and he's going to give us the male perspective of some of what we were talking about, and then I want to go back and address a couple things. Go ahead, Michael.
Good evening, everyone. I came kind of late because I was another meeting earlier for another Zoom call, but what I was able to hear so far, Latoya just made a very good point, interesting point, that a lot of females are very aggressive to males. To piggyback off of that really quick, my oldest, I have two sons. My oldest son was back in middle school. I don't want to sound too vulgar, but he was told about, the anecdote about your feet size. The bigger your feet, the bigger your, okay. So moving on, and I said, well, who said that to you? He said, a young girl. And I said, who? He said, a young lady. I said, she did what? He said, yeah, she told me that. And I said, man, I said, well, you know what? I said to him, I said, what did you do? He said, well, I just laughed. And I said, that's all you did? He said, yeah, I just laughed. I said, well, did she approach you any further than that? He said, no. So that kind of opened my eyes in today's era of these young people, the women being very aggressive, And I was saying to my wife, Pam, that's when I said, hey, these women nowadays, I said, I don't want to live in this time. I said, because my time I thought it was bad. But to have a woman in my time when I was a teenager, no one would approach me that way. So it kind of opened my eyes from that perspective. That's one. Two, I've recently been, I was in the last year or so, I've been reading Sister White's The Adventist Home. Very interesting about how the roles of a mother and a father should be. She was very strong about the mother's role in the home as far as raising the children. She has a point about the father, but it seemed like she kept emphasizing the mother on how a child should be raised and how a child should be taught values in life. My perspective now is that to females, the female population out there, is to really don't lower your standards. Do not lower your standards, because when you lower your standards, you're going to get what you want. And that's not the best thing for you. We go back in our times, so in my times, every generation has its own thing. You run across different people, but keep your standards high. It may take a while. Continue in prayer. Go about in prayer. It may sound that's kind of corny, but in the long run, you're going to get what you're looking for. Your desire. Remember, God said, "I will give you the desires of your heart," and you want that. Okay, you just want to settle for anybody because, like, you can settle for settling. You're going to get that. It's not going to be a good thing for you in the long run. Okay. But what I've been hearing so far is that, like Sonia said earlier, remember your body is a temple, and you want to keep your temple as pure as best for you, yourself first, before anybody else. Use yourself as an individual, and then you can give that beautiful temple, to someone else, your fellow man. Okay, that's the best I can say at this time. What I've heard so far, and if you keep those things in perspective, you'll come out all right.
Okay. Well, I was looking at a comment that Marissa made with the music videos, and you know, the music videos portray, and it goes back to what we talked about before with um, Pastor Campbell. Hollywood has this certain look, and it goes back to the colorism, because we talked about colorism last time, and body type. We all don't fit into that body type. Very few of us do. We're real women, we're real men. And I have a son as well, and I taught my son, you treat that woman the way you would treat your sister or me. And so my son, when talking to him, he's like, Mom, you just don't know. These women are so aggressive. Some of the things that they walk up and say to him, when he repeats them, I just like, no, they didn't say that to you. The boldness of some women, it blows my mind. It's not like the era that we came from. And when I look at some of the videos that Narissa was alluding to, the lack of respect for themselves. They call themselves all out of their name. And if you're portraying it, the young girls are watching these videos and they're lifting up and glorifying these women who are like the Nicki Minaj's, who are just completely, her whole name tells you what she's about. And it's always degrading women, degrading guys. We have to set a standard for young people of Christ, that our standard is here. And if you want to date us, you have to come up to this standard. I'm not going to settle for down here. You got to pull it up. I was also sent this comment. A young lady can also teach a young man how to treat her, to be respectful, if he is capable of being taught. There's some guys and girls out there, because unfortunately now you just can't say it's just the girls or just the guys, that they haven't been taught. Like literally, they haven't been taught. But like this person said, if you see that there is potential, then maybe you can. And I know that I was talking with Corinne and Jessica about the potential aspect of, listen, there's some, you might see a guy on there and he's not very groomed or whatever, but baby, you could say to him, because I know I did this at Oakwood with a couple friends of mine, and we're still lifelong friends. I said, you're not a bad looking guy, because we got to be friends. I said, but you don't comb your hair and make it look nice, or go. I found out he was giving himself his own haircut. So I said to him, listen, you're gonna have to spend them $10 and go get a haircut. And instead of buying those Kmart jeans, I'm not trying. I said, if you don't have the money, you can go and get Levi's or whatever jeans that happen to be. You can go to a thrift store; they have them. I'm not, and I don't have a problem. I thrift shop at times. Go there, launder the stuff, and put them. And then all of a sudden, he started actually listening to what I said. And the next thing I know, he became the man. And I had to laugh. But those simple things, you got to be open to be able to see potential. Just
I wanted to say to the tidbit of women approaching men very aggressively. I'm not, again, this is me being on social media, and Corinne can probably attest to this. Society, or what also, a lot of men have called this upon themselves. When I say that, meaning they like to say, I like a girl that is aggressive. I want her to approach me. Shoot your shot, meaning hop in my DMs and shoot your shot. I don't want to be the one shooting the shot. Why do we always have to shoot our shot? And this is where it came from. This happened, like, I would say society, like this type of culture started to happen more around 2015, 2016. That's when the phrase shoot your shot came around, because a lot of men were like, well, I don't want to be the one shooting my shot. Why don't you shoot your shot at me? Those are that also a lot of the time is, I'm not making excuses, trust me, because I think the concept is very flawed where it is now. But a lot of times, a lot of these men have called it upon themselves, and this is where we're at. So these are the things that sometimes, I'm not saying that anybody's lying, but sometimes the full aspect of it is a lot of times in this society, we are looking at more of an even playing field when it comes to men and women courting. It's not how it was in the 90s and 80s, even early 2000s, and so on and so forth. We're looking at men wanting women to shoot their shot, men wanting women to do a lot more, and being a little bit more moving forward in terms of even playing field when it comes to that. So those are the things that you have to keep in mind where we're at now. This is dating in 2020 and forward. That's where we're at now. So I just wanted to put that out there.
We can even go a step further, even as far as actually going out on a date. You have some men who think that women should pay for the date, and I'm just like, start. And I feel like certain things, I feel like we need to go back traditionally, where a man takes the lead on certain things. And everybody's like, well, some people are like, oh, but it's 2020, us women, we can do it. We have girl power, da, da, da. And I don't feel like it has anything to do with that. It's just how it is now. Yeah. I actually like this comment that just came in. She said there's a good portion of men who are completely fine with women making the first move, and there are guys who have no idea how to make the first move. Remember, there's a severe lack of father figures. And we just keep going back to the home and how it is viewed. And I like that point. Yeah. Go ahead, Toya.
Oh, and I understand that this is 2020. I understand we are millennials, girl power. I understand we independent women. I understand we all gonna level up, get in line. I understand that. But you have a lot of women that, for example, the issues where the teachers were sleeping with the young men. There was a couple teachers in the school that were sleeping with the young men, and these are high school students. So we can't. I understand we're like shoot your shot. We want an aggressive woman, but you also have to understand that there are predators out there, and it's not just for women. There are predators for men and boys. There are certain women that look for men that certain standard, men that are married, that are going through marital problems. Ones that they meet at a bar. Trust me, there are women out there that prey on men, and they know these men are married. There's some women out there that only date married men. Why? They're preying on them. Because there's some women out there that only want to be a side chick. Why? You're preying on this man. I understand he probably wanted to cheat, yeah, but it was up to you to say no. But guess what? Majority of the time you approached him, but you can't just say that all the men,
No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not saying that. I totally get it. I'm just saying there are also those factors.
Yeah. There are some guys who like that. There's some guys who like the aggressive women. There's some guys, but we also have to take in consideration, especially our young guys, our impressionable 14, 15, 16-year-olds that are going into this era. I don't want Kevin to be like, oh yeah, I'm okay with an aggressive. No, you're not. You're not okay with an aggressive woman, because if you bring her here to my house, we're going to have a problem. But because I don't want you to feel like this woman has to take the lead in every aspect. I want you to be a man and be able to stand on your own 2 feet and to be able to say, okay, certain things you take the lead, certain things I take the lead, because it tends to be when you get an overly aggressive woman, the man starts to diminish. And it's like he starts to lose a little bit every time You with this aggressive woman, you start to lose a little bit every single time. And that has something to do with their masculinity too. You can't, the poor man, like I have daughters too, but I feel for my son because he's older and I'm starting to see these aggressive little girls. And I'm just like, hey, you have to pay attention to what you like and what you dislike, and don't let anyone force you. We still have to set the standard for our boys also, because we want our boys to grow up to open car doors, to pay for meals. We got to set standards for them too. But when we're setting these standards, we want to let them know that you're not to be used. You're not a doormat. This is you don't have to do certain things. You don't have to feel obligated to do certain things to make this girl feel like, oh, however.
Okay, Mike.
My experience was that before I left home to go to school, college, the greatest person who taught me about females was my mom. And my mom just took the aggressive role, if you want to call it that. And she just said, "Okay, look, let me just sit down and talk with you." And we rapped for like about 3 hours. And she said, "Mike, the best way how you can know about a woman is to hear it from a woman, because a woman knows a woman." And she taught me a lot. She taught me a lot of things, and it was very eye-opening. And then I didn't get that first-hand experience until I got down to Oakwood. And when I got down to Oakwood, I saw some things that she said was true. Some things were not true. Some things that by the time she had that conversation with me, I probably had experienced it at the academy. I went to the academy. And I probably it went over my head. I experienced whatever. Just okay, whatever. But then when I sat back and looked at it, it was like, well, yeah, that happened and that happened. She conversation was too late. But when I got to Oakwood, I said, yeah, no, I don't want you. I don't want that. But after post high school, my wife and I knew each other before Oakwood, and one thing, my wife and I, we were flexible, and I want to say we were flexible as far as we talked about everything. We could talk about politics. We talked about socialism. We talked about city government. We read the newspaper. We read newspapers in New York, and we talked about international news, national news. And so you want to encourage somebody who's flexible in knowledge and conversation. Get to know the person, because if you don't know the person beforehand, when situations arise and you get the attitude, it's late. You already crossed that bridge into marriage. You get an attitude person like, oh dang, I didn't know you acted like that. But it's too late at that time if you make that move to marrying that person that you didn't get to know beforehand. I just like to say that, hey, once you just talk about courting earlier on, someone's talking about courting, take your time, because like I said, it's going to work out better in the long run. But at the same time, you'll know somebody that you're courting and you're conversating frequently about, that they're flexible. Because like now I'm learning about Discord and more about Zoom and more about GoToMeeting, and now I'm far more flexible about that as far as the technology works, because that's where we're in. It's no longer where it's like, are we going to it? We are in it forced hand by COVID. And the more you flexible about it and know you more the language and lingo, like you got some on Instagram and you talking about TikTok and whatever, the more knowledgeable that person is going to be, who you're trying to get along with. Because once you have that communication, when it comes down to as much as technology we have nowadays, going back to old school, it all comes down to communication.
Yeah.
And when
you communicate, good.
We also have to look at the standard that you set for, like, example, if you go out on your first date with this person, you can't start at a 5-star restaurant and then the second date you come with Burger King. I'm not going for it. That I just no. Anybody who thinks that you doing something, if you're taking me to Burger King, we can't. I'm not even saying you have to be at a 5-star and break a bag to take me out. But be honest with yourself. Be realistic. Do not set the bar so high that you can't come back and make it special a second time.
So in other words, you're saying don't perpetrate. Yeah. Don't try to act like
don't catfish your personality.
You got $1.99
because you're looking at what you see on social media. Because
don't catfish the personality.
Yeah.
because you are
Yeah.
not a rapper. You cannot afford a Birkin bag. Don't even put yourself in that
Don't set
bracket.
yourself
Yes.
up. Don't set your. And here's what I would say also. You know, some of the most memorable times that you can have is maybe the times that you're broke. There's this singer that sings about, you know, I don't have $1, but we're gonna have a good time. Maybe what? Heck, you don't have. Okay, you know that you have $20 that you can spare for the whole week. Why would you take this person to a restaurant that you know is gonna run you $50? That doesn't make any sense. Take those $20 and go and buy some subs and make up a picnic.
But sometimes
And then-
it doesn't even have to be anything like that. You can even go simpler. Go walk on the Ave and we go take pictures or something.
Right.
Some of the most simple things are the better than you trying to.
But that's what I'm saying. If you only have $20 and you want to go out, okay, make up a picnic basket. Cut the sandwiches in, and she has two, and you have two, or whatever, and make a little picnic and go to the beach and sit on the beach. And that is the cheapest date you can have, but it's memorable because you took the time to put thought into making this presentation. It's not all about, and see, here is where we get back to the principles that God had. You have to, first of all, it's easy to go and be, you know, intimate and do something stupid. That's real easy. It doesn't take a lot. I'm telling you, when the Bible talks about sin is easy to fall in. It takes thought and preparation to do it God's way. Remember, the path to Christ is narrow, but it's straight. And if you have to think about what you're doing and put some time in, I'd rather have the time and the simple, like for instance, walking down the Ave, showing that you care about who I am. And at the end of the day, I'm sorry, I'd rather have a man's man than to have a wimpy man who's gonna be led. Because where's the challenge of having to have conversation and to be able to, because when all that, oh, he looks so good, and oh, she's so pretty, all that fades away. You need to be friends. Michael, you know I'm telling the truth. You have to be friends with that person, because the older you get, the more you change. You're going to evolve. Correct. You're going to evolve. And the man is supposed to be there to be your protector. You're supposed to be the help me. I don't care how sexist or whatever, but at the end of the day, that's what the roles are. I mean, you could be just, I mean, I know female police officers who are married, and when they get home, oh, they can take that hat off and be the woman that they need to be. And that's not taking anything away from you. That's how God planned it. And we got to get back to basic, respectful, following the principles of God. And you got to become friends with these people, because if you're not going to be friends, it's not going to work. Am I telling the truth, Michael? From a male perspective?
Yeah, you are, and like you said, take that $20, and we are created beings from Christ. Like Corinne was saying, take that $20. That's all I'm gonna make that whole day. I could do $3 here, $3 there, $3 there, and be creative. But this thing with COVID has made, like, I work a lot of Pathfinders in my club, and kids are struggling mentally and socially. These kids are struggling. I mean, they really are. So what it forces us to do now, what we have to do before, we have to be creative to make this thing work, with connection with these young kids, because they don't have the touchy feely thing anymore. So it forces us to be creative to make things work. How can we keep these kids in it, make them be connected with one another socially through the media, and how to go ahead at the same time have a connection with Christ. So that's what we're working right now. So like you said, going back to what you were saying, the $20, be creative. I can get some chips. I can get some dip. I can make a bag. I can put in a brown bag, tear it open in a fashionable way, and then look what I created. Picnic basket, whatever. And that's how the communication starts. You start your base, your foundation, your relationship.
Well, I tell you, we could go on and on. I hope that we have shared some of the principles, but let me just say in these last few minutes, waning minutes, that we have to remember that we are supposed to be peculiar people. We are the bodies of Christ. Our body is a temple, and we have to know that when God is dwelling in it, we shouldn't do anything in this temple that we wouldn't do in front of God because He's there. So we need to remember those principles. Even though we're in this modern day, we still have to keep up certain principles and respect ourselves, because at the end of the day, without self-esteem, you can't do it. I want to thank everyone for coming on, for joining us. If you have any suggestions of programming or something that you'd like to see, please send it to our Daughter of Zion thing. It'll get to me, or hit me up if you know me personally, and give us suggestions. If you'd like to be a part of the show, let me know as well. I want to thank again Michael for joining us. I'm sorry that it was so late. We've had so much technical difficulty, but we're going to go back and pull our other gentleman that was supposed to be on as well. We're going to invite Michael back. Jessica, I want to thank you for always being faithful. Thank you so much. Toya, thank you for being faithful. Thank you, Corinne. And as we close this Sabbath evening, we want to pray that everyone stays safe and that you have keep your mind stayed on God, because COVID messes with you, and continue to be blessed. Thank you, Andre Anderson, for being our tech person and always being in the pros. You all have a great evening. Be blessed.